Welcome to Rad Sibs Spotlight, a podcast for parents and siblings of children with reactive attachment disorder. Our special guest host today is Carrie O'Toole from Carrie O'Toole Ministries. Carrie?
It's really a blessing and a pleasure to be here. Today we have some amazing young people as our guests. And the first most amazing, not that there's a degree, but is my daughter, Katie. So that's why I say she's most amazing. But we also have Landon. So Katie and Landon, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Well, both of you are Rad Sibs. And I know you have different stories. So I would love to hear just a little bit about your stories. Why don't you each share, we'll start with Landon. Why don't you share just a little bit about your family and who's in your family, first of all?
Well, in my family, I have three other siblings. So I have an older brother who is my biological brother. And then I have two younger adopted siblings. Both of them have RAD. And yeah, so I don't really
That's
know
why you're here.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
How about you, Katie?
So I have one older brother who is adopted without RAD, and I had a younger brother who was also adopted, and he did have and still does have RAD.
Yeah. And explain a little bit about that, if you will, Katie, because I'm sure as Rad Sibs goes on, we're going to find that there's people in many different types of families and situations. And so Landon, your siblings are still with you. And Katie, you want to share a little bit about what happened in our family?
Yeah. My younger brother, we adopted from Vietnam, and he had RAD. And after we had parented him and given him a home for 8 years, we ended up having him move in with another family that we knew, and they ended up adopting him into their family.
Right. So a little bit different situations here, but we want you to know that Rad Sibs all kind of get this world, whether your sibling is still with you or whether they've had to move, whether it's residential or treatment. Because Landon, your sibling, you had one that had to move to a residential place for a while too, right?
Yes, he went to a place in Colorado. But yeah, he was there for a couple of months. I think like 7 months he was there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a different situation then too. It throws your whole family into different dynamics, doesn't it, when they're gone?
Yes, it does. It seemed to be a little calmer around the house for a while, actually.
And then they came back.
Yes, he did come back, which I was very hesitant about at first, but it's turned out to be a good thing. He has had a lot of work, and he's done a lot of work to improve it, and he understands it a little bit more now. So he's working pretty hard to work through and redevelop those neural pathways that were hardwired incorrectly.
That's fabulous. And, you know, in our family, as Katie could tell you, we did some work and didn't understand all of this as much as people do now, because when we started all of this, Facebook didn't exist. The internet really wasn't there much. And so the resources were very, very scarce. And so we would say he probably has not had a whole lot of healing because there's not been a lot of therapy. So everybody's going to be in different situations here. How old were you, Landon, when you adopted?
When my younger brother was adopted, I was 10 years old. And then when my little sister was adopted, I was 15.
Okay. And Katie, how about you?
Well, my older brother was adopted before I was born, so I was not present for that. But my younger brother, we adopted when I was 7.
Yeah. And tell us just a little bit about what you enjoy in the world. What kind of hobbies or activities or sports or music, what do you like to do, Landon?
My biggest hobby is I really like working on cars and going to car shows and all that kind of stuff. So it's an expensive hobby that I spend a lot of money on, but yeah, it's that's my main thing. I play a few video games here and there, but not as much as I used to. It's mostly work and cars that I enjoy right now.
Awesome. And how about you, Katie?
Well, I currently have a 5-month-old daughter, so all my hobbies and activities are revolving around her at the moment. But before she was born, I was a professional musician, and I too enjoy playing video games, although it's been very infrequent, we'll say.
Got a few other priorities going at the moment, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, could you guys describe just a little bit about what it was like and what it is still like for you, Landon, living with a sibling who has RAD? Landon, why don't you go first?
At first, well, I'm a quiet person, so even this podcast is a little bit out of my comfort level, but you know, here I am trying to help out as much as I can. But so when we were younger, I kind of just separated myself because I felt something was off playing with him. There was no like reciprocating emotion playing with him. So I just kind of like backed off and didn't really try and interact, I guess, which is probably not a good thing, but it was what I did. And so yeah, it was kind of weird not having any kind of emotion reciprocated when you're playing with them. Like you'd be happy having fun and they'd just be standing there like staring at you and fake laughing and all that kind of stuff. So it was just interesting, I guess.
Yeah, Katie, what about you?
Yeah, I would say similar. I'm not exactly a quiet type. I'm more talkative, but I did find myself becoming more quiet and less engaged while my younger brother was here, just because I felt like I couldn't really say anything without it like getting turned back on me and getting me in trouble. So yeah, I mean, I would play with him, and he seemed to like me the most out of all of us. So we would play the most, but it was also really tough actually doing any playing. Like you were saying, they would stand there and just kind of laugh uneasily. It's like, yeah, I remember that. Or like he just didn't understand how to play in certain ways. So I wanted to play something and he didn't get it, or he got it but like made it not fun. So play was not exactly the easiest with him.
Yeah, I remember, and you guys can chime in on this, but I remember talking to a friend after our son had been in his new family for a couple of years, and I would think back and go, what was really so hard? Because it's like, well, a lot of siblings have issues and a lot of kids don't play great together, but she reminded me, she said she had come around one time when our family, there were a lot of kids around and we were all trying to play a game. And she said it was just amazing how he could take a game and need to control everything to where nobody was having fun and you had to stop. You just couldn't even continue. So it's hard for people to understand that. Do you guys have any specific memories of anything like that?
Yeah. One that I'm pretty sure you remember pretty well, Mom. We were playing like mini t-ball out in the backyard one time.
Oh yes.
I was like, okay, stand way back, because you're swinging a metal bat around, and as I was swinging to hit the ball off the tee, he came running forward and I nailed him in the forehead, and suddenly Katie is the worst person in the world because she just beat her little brother to the ground with a metal bat. So for a long time I was blamed for that, and it was not very fun because he would bring it up and be like, oh yeah, you hit me in the head with a metal baseball bat. So yeah, you're horrible. And I'm just like, well, you were the one who ran forward and I told you to stay back. And
for people who don't understand that, there is a manipulative kind of thing going on within them. And we all know this is a survival technique, but isn't that strange that in your survival, you would actually run forward and make yourself get hit in the head? It's just so crazy. Landon,
He got some really nice treatment from you guys after that happened. So I think that's why he did it.
Probably.
Yeah.
Landon, do you have any like that?
There was one time we went to Disneyland, and my older brother and I were sitting on a rail, which we probably shouldn't have been doing, but we were tall enough, and me being tall enough to do anything like that is surprising. And he was, I can't remember, he was probably like 7 or 8, and he decided he wanted to sit on the rail too. And so he sat on the rail and swung backwards and cracked the back of his head open and got like 9 staples in the back of his head on the first day we were at Disneyland. And he blamed it on me pushing him. So that's probably the only one I can actually remember.
Yeah, and I happen to remember one more with our son that had to do with our other son, but this was a couple of years after he had moved into his new family, and he and Katie had a little Facebook chat going on one time, and he had to have surgery for something that was a congenital issue that he would have needed the surgery for anyway, but he really believed that it was because his brother had kicked him, and that was why he needed to have the surgery. So very similar kind of thing. Yeah. And the next question, did your sibling ever blame you for something that they did? We're so ahead. We already covered that, but is there anything else you can think of? And how did you handle that? Katie, you want to start?
Sure. So I would say there's 2 that come to mind, and they're not the same instance, but they're similar enough. So the first one is one night we were eating spaghetti, and he dumped his bowl on the floor and tried to clean it up and ended up spreading it all over the carpet, and then blamed it on me. And somehow he got away with blaming it on me, even though I was the clean one. I was the good one who wouldn't have spilled it. And yet I ended up getting blamed because he was just so good about saying the right things to make it believable that I was the one who did it. And then the second instance was I wanted to go to a friend's house for either like a birthday party or a sleepover or something. And my room was pretty messy. And you and Dad said, well, you can go as long as you clean up your room first. So I spent it was probably like Saturday or something. I spent all Saturday cleaning up my room. It was looking as spotless as it could look for I think I was 12 years old. And then I went to bed. And the next morning I woke up and my room was a disaster. It was like all my clothes had been thrown out of the dresser, torn out of the closet. It was right around Easter time, and I had an Easter basket, and all my Easter candy was eaten. And I had a little disco lamp in the corner of my room, and that was turned on and spinning. And I was like freaked out because I was like, what happened? And Dad came down and said, oh, you didn't clean your room. I guess you're not going to your party. And obviously that wasn't me because I was asleep. And my brother later confessed to doing it because he wanted me to stay home and play with him instead of go to this party or sleepover or whatever it was.
Yeah. How about you, Landon?
Other than the Disneyland I pushed him thing, I don't remember anything that he blamed me for. It seemed like a lot of his blaming and targeting was towards my older brother. So I remember there was a time where I think my brother had like to clean up his room or something like that. And my brother did it. And, my brother's the kind of guy, you tell him to do something, he's going to do it as soon as you tell him to do it. And if you tell him not to do something, he's never going to do it again. And so my dad had told him to clean his room, and he cleaned his room. And then my brother left, and my dad got home. And when my dad got home, it wasn't done. And it was because my little brother had gone in there and moved something or put something where it wasn't supposed to be. And so my dad and my brother get into this big, huge arguing, screaming match because they're both my dad's very direct, where like it's almost like he was in the military, and he wasn't. And my brother is just a big personality. He's got to have the last word kind of guy. So they're both button heads and going at it. And I just remember seeing, I think I walked in and I saw my little brother at the end of the hallway smiling, like he had caused all of this and was happy about it. So I only really remember my older brother getting targeted, not really me.
Yeah, and for you Sibs out there, it's difficult if you're the one that gets targeted, and it's also difficult if you're watching them target one of your other siblings, because you know what's going on, but like both of you said, you know, well, Katie, in fact, you said sometimes mom and dad don't believe you. And the reason for that doesn't really matter. It's interesting because as a mom, I know that he could be so convincing, and moms and dads really want to believe our kids are telling the truth. And yet they could manipulate so well. And when you talk, Landon, about the smirk, the little grin at the end of the hallway, I know exactly the look you're talking about. Katie, do you know the look?
Oh yeah, I got it quite a few times.
Yeah, I think every sibling and parent watching this will know the look. And it's a look that neurotypical kids don't have. It's a look that kids who are attached don't use. Other kids don't try to get people in trouble and then chuckle and smile and laugh that they got away with it. You know, this is something that you guys have had to deal with that a lot of other kids have never had to deal with. And that's a tough place to be. So how did you talk to your parents after something like this happened? And, you know, Katie and I have done a podcast before, and we've already talked about this is hard even now for her and I to have these conversations. And Landon, I would imagine it's probably hard for you and your parents to have these conversations because we all love each other and nobody wants to create any more harm. And this has created some distance and damage. And we're trying to work to repair, but then we have different memories of what happened and how it happened. And trauma does that, and this manipulation that went on created a lot of that. So what did you guys do? How did you handle trying to talk to your parents about it? Katie, you want to start?
Sure. Well, while he was here, I really didn't try talking to you guys a lot because I was the peacemaker. So if I were to bring it up, you know, it would just cause more issues. And I know it was really hard on you guys just having to deal with him all the time. So if I was to come forward and say, hey, you're not believing me, or hey, he's doing this behind your back and you don't even realize it, that would just cause more chaos and more panic. So I didn't say anything while he was here. I was the good kid. I didn't have any problems. Like, I was the only person not getting in trouble. And I wasn't about to change that by saying, this isn't working for me. So it wasn't until a few years after he left that we even started talking about this stuff. And like you said, it's still difficult even today because those patterns that were established kept going through the years. So like one of the things that we've been working on is you used to think that I was either over exaggerating something or just kind of fibbing the truth a little bit in order to get a little extra attention, such as I have asthma. And so there would be times where you wanted to go on a walk or a bike ride or do something exercise induced. And I didn't want to go because my asthma would get really bad. But you had a feeling that I was not wanting to go because it was like my way of having a little bit of control over our situation. And you know, there might have been some of that involved. I don't know necessarily if it was the asthma thing, but in some cases, like I probably did over exaggerate, or I did make things sound a little bit worse than they actually were so that I would get attention while he was here. And so that pattern kind of did carry through, but there's a little bit of give and take in I'm learning how to not exaggerate things and just say how they are and say, I still need help, even though it's not as bad as what it might sound like.
Your hair's not on fire, but that doesn't mean you still don't need some help.
Exactly. And you're learning that, even if sometimes things might seem exaggerated, maybe they're not actually exaggerated. So there's like a little bit of give and take, trying to learn how to have this relationship as mother-daughter, but grown up as well, and apart from the trauma. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How about you, Landon?
Definitely. I was, the good kid. I didn't say anything, because I didn't want to cause any more grief for my mom or dad. And even to this day, there are times where I will say something and then like retract it back because I don't like, oh yeah, well, like I didn't mean that, like, you know what I mean? Kind of.
It's not that bad.
It's not that bad, but I'll say it first and then like retract it back so it doesn't put too much worry on my mom. And and there are times where I wonder if I would have said anything, if it would have been better, or if I would, because I didn't really even say anything at all that would make my mom think I was over exaggerating or anything. I just kept my head low, didn't talk, just went about my day, got through the day, and I just kept.
Yeah. I coach with families all over who are living with kids with RAD, and I hear your stories, both of you, over and over and over again. So many kids try to be the good kid, or they go into kind of trying to be the clown, where they try to lighten things up a little bit so that everybody's not all stiff and tense all the time, or nothing I do matters anyway, so I'm going to do whatever I want, and it's interesting to see how different Sibs deal with this kind of a thing, because it's very, very tough. And it's hard when you need to be able to speak to your parents and you don't feel like you can, especially if you're right still in the middle of it, because you're, Katie, with you and I, we're kind of on the other side of it. And so we're able to go in and say, okay, we're not still in crisis all the time. We have a chance now to heal up. Landon, your family still is a little bit here and there. And so it's a little bit different situation with both of you. But I want siblings to know out there, you're not alone in this. This is tough, tough stuff. Could you guys each share something that you found that helped you get through those tough times? Or was there anything?
Yeah, for me, I had a friend who lived across the street during the worst of the years. And I would run over to her place whenever I just couldn't handle it at home anymore. And she saw what was going on at our house, which was rare because almost every other one of my friends only saw the fact that he was this cute, really charismatic little guy. And he was really easy to get along with unless you knew him really, really well. And so my friend across the street, she was like the only person who like would come over and she'd see what was going on at our house. And she's like, this is every day. Like, yep. And so she would invite me over all the time. Her parents were great. They were like, if you ever need to come over, just come over. And I was like, I'm there every day. I literally went over to her house, I don't know, probably every day for 3 or 4 years. And when she moved, it was like the hardest thing for me to just kind of adjust to the fact that I didn't have a friend to escape to every single day. Mm-hmm. And then after he left, the thing that really helped me was going to counseling and getting therapy and being able to just talk it out with somebody who wasn't going to say, what? That doesn't sound that bad. Or, oh, he was such a good little guy. Like, I couldn't see how he would be that bad. Like, maybe you're over exaggerating it. So just having those two outlets were, I think, the most helpful for me.
Yeah, that's great. How about you, Landon?
So I kind of went the complete opposite way. I just kept getting even more secluded, and I would go to work or go on YouTube and learn as much as I could about cars or video games, or then I go to school and just I knew a lot of people, but I didn't ever feel like I had friends, and all that kind of just I'd come home, go to my room, go back on my phone or on the computer, go to YouTube or something, and that was pretty much what I did. That's how I got through it, and it's probably not the best thing to do because I got so quiet that my mom didn't even recognize that I was depressed until I was like 16 and going into my junior year of high school. And it was when my grades started slipping and I was getting like C's and D's that my mom was like, "What is going on with you?" And she was like kind of mad at me. And then I was like, "Mom, I just don't have any drive to do anything at all." And she was like, "Are you depressed?" And I was like, "Maybe, I don't know." Like, it was
This
just
is normal for me. I don't know what
I just-
depression feels like.
how I've been. And so I started going to a therapist and got some medication, and just that helped a lot. And I kind of opened up my shell after that, and after talking, and I actually had friends, and some of those friends I actually moved in with when I graduated high school, and my parents moved to Georgia because we lived in California at the time. So I stayed in California and stayed with some friends, and then I moved out to Georgia. So yeah, so now I'm here.
Yeah. So has it made a big difference in your life?
Yes, it has. Just even realizing that I was depressed and that what I was feeling and how I was feeling wasn't normal even helped me just even push myself to be more vocal and more social than I was.
Yeah. Katie?
That's very interesting because that's the same year. It was when I was 16 and I was a junior in high school where I was diagnosed with depression, and I went on medication as well. So interesting that it happened to be the same year. It was also very helpful for me just to have that acknowledged and start getting help for that. And I will say during that time, I was also very much in a shell, and didn't really feel like I had very many friends either. And I don't know if that changed too much. The shell part did, but I didn't feel like I started getting friends until after I left my high school, because it was like everybody knew what happened in high school. So for me, it was more healing to leave high school than it was to stay there and get the help and treatment at the same time.
Well, and Landon, you mentioned just a little bit about what was not helpful, with the isolating and just staying on your phone and on YouTube and all of that kind of stuff. Was there anything else that you found that you sort of were drawn to do, but it really was not helpful?
I feel like all the stuff that I was drawn to do was extremely not helpful. Like just staying quiet and I've become, it's very difficult for me to show emotions now because I'm so, even today, I'm still so guarded about opening up, and I've learned more to open up, but it's still hard for me, all from just not wanting to be a burden with my emotions or my issues at the time. So I just kept bottling them up and keeping it inside. So it's been difficult in relationships too, for me to be able to express what I'm feeling.
Yeah, so it continues even today to be something that you have to work on. It doesn't just fix itself automatically. Is that accurate?
Yes, very accurate. It has been probably 4 years of me trying to work on emotions, and I'm still not good at them.
Yeah. How about you, Katie?
Well, I think it's interesting that you even said, like, what are the things that you were drawn to do that were not helpful? Because when you're depressed, you're not really drawn to do anything. So that was me, like, for years, and I didn't know it was years, but for years I had no motivation, no desire to do anything, no drive to even get out of bed most days. And it just kind of came to a head after he left, because that's when I was like, okay, well, there's nothing I need to do now, so I'm just gonna stay in bed all the time. So I don't know if I would say there was anything I was driven to do that was unhelpful, because at the time I just didn't feel like doing anything. So so I guess in that sense it was unhelpful, because I wasn't doing anything. I was staying in bed all day. Like, you would drag me out to eat every now and then and make sure I went to the bathroom, and that was basically my entire day. If I wasn't at school, or I mean, summers were just literally a nightmare for me. I was so excited to get back to school because I didn't see anybody over the summer, and I didn't leave the house really. So it was just kind of like 3 months of just staying in my room, and
Wow.
I would not recommend doing that.
Yeah, and so we would get you up and out for dinner, and let's go on a walk, let's go on a bike ride, parents dragging you around to get you out of the house so you're not sitting there being depressed all the time, which is hard. It's hard for everybody. What do you wish that you had known when you were younger?
That it was entirely okay to speak up, and that it wouldn't have been a burden for me to tell my parents what was going on in my life, and that I definitely should have talked more, even though it's not really in my personality. Even before the depression, I was just a quiet kid. So even speaking up the little that I could would have been more than enough.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I think if I could go back and talk to my little self, I would have said, like, you are also worthy of your parents' attention. Because the big thing for me was I was the good kid, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease or the oil or whatever you say. And I was anything but a squeaky wheel. So I just never really got that much attention because I wasn't the one causing problems. So I would like to tell myself, like, you're also worthy of your parents' attention, and not just the negative attention, not just like the punishment or the discipline, but also like time to go out with your mom for coffee dates, or time to go out with your dad and just go bowling or something. So that, but also I would like to be able to tell myself, like, there are other people out there like you. When this all happened for us, it was like 11 years ago. We had not heard of any other families going through anything like this. Like my mom said earlier, there was no Facebook, there was no social media. I mean, it came out well, I guess it came out about 11 years ago, but it was so new. Nobody knew how to use it. Nobody knew how to get in contact with other people in groups or forums, or even just ask questions like, hey, is this normal? So to have learned in the last decade that there are other people, there are other families going through this, there are other siblings who know what it's like to go through life with a sibling that has RAD, it's like, it really does help a lot to just know there are other people out there, and there are ways of contacting those people. And like us right now, we're trying to be a resource for people like us who are looking for just, is there anyone else out there like me? And I think it's really cool that now we do have that option to find other people that are going through the same thing that we went through or are going through.
Well, can I even just ask, Katie, what's it like for you hearing Landon share today? And then Landon, I'll ask the same of you.
Well, it is interesting because like half the things you said, I was like, hey, me too. And I totally understand like the situations you were describing, even if they weren't exactly what I went through. They were similar enough in behavior that it's like, yeah, I recognize that behavior. It's definitely familiar to me. So it's like, I can understand where you're coming from. And then I can also be like, hey, that's great. He gets what I'm going to talk about. So if I say, hey, this is kind of weird, but this is what happened, you can be like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, definitely. I felt the same. Like when you just started talking about the baseball bat thing. I was just like, yep, I got blamed for pushing him when he fell off the rail purposely. And so I was just like, yeah, no, same. I understand it completely. So it is weird because you're the first other sibling of a rad kid that I've ever met. So it's even more like weird that like I knew there were kids out there because I know how common rad is, but I just haven't met any other siblings with rad.
Yeah, I haven't really met that many. I've started this year kind of talking a little bit to some of the children of some of my mom's clients, just to say like, hey, I went through it too. This is what happened for me. Do you have any questions? And it's been crazy just hearing their stories and just being able to hear that their lives, their realities are so similar to what I went through. And it is encouraging and also a little bit sad because I can totally understand the pain and the confusion that everybody is going through, but it's also nice to know that there are other people out there like us. And I've just started getting to meet more of them in the last year, which I think is really cool.
Well, and what I love about both of you doing this is with what happened with us in our family, we had nobody else that had been through this or that we knew. And so for our family, trying to find resources for our kids, we were just shooting in the dark, trying to figure this out. And our hope is through Rad Sibs, through my ministry, through Rad Advocates, is that other kids will not be as alone as our kids were. And even, Katie, it seems to me, now you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that doing some of the coaching has actually kind of helped you a little bit. It feels good to be able to help some of those younger kids. And Landon, you can tell me about doing this podcast today. Is that helpful to be able to do that?
Yeah, I would say just being able to talk to some of the siblings, I wouldn't say it's necessarily like 100% healing for me, but it is validating. And I have gone through a lot of healing, so it might have been a little bit more healing to me in the past, but right now it's just like, it's really validating to know like my experience that I went through is able to help other people now. So it makes it more worth it. And it makes it seem like it's like I have something to contribute, despite the fact that, for 8 years, I felt like I was kind of in a semi-nightmare almost. And like, even when we did our podcast a couple weeks ago, I thought it was just going to be kind of a cool little video. And I was happy to share my experience. And I thought a couple people might watch it, but we got so many responses just saying, thank you so much for helping. And I was like, really? Like, I'm really glad that it's helping, but I was surprised that it was so helpful. But it really does make me happy that I'm able to make an impact just by sharing what I went through.
Yeah.
So we just recently, and recent is a relative term, I guess, about 3 years ago, found out what RAD was. And I think it was a year and a half or 2 years ago, we found out about Rad Advocates. And so for a majority of the time, I just didn't know what was going on. And it was just crazy. So I feel like even with all of the resources that were out there, we still didn't have it and felt like we were all in a bubble. And then now when I saw my mom post something on Facebook about Rad Sibs, and I was like, I want to do that. Like I need to help out somehow. So that's why I'm here. And just being able to talk about it right now is actually really helpful too, because my mom's sitting in the corner over there listening, and I am not filtering anything, so she's getting everything.
Yeah.
There's that too. So
yeah, and I think that's really important for you to do. And Katie and I have done this numerous times off camera as well as on camera. We've had some really heart-to-heart, hard conversations that have led to healing. And I'm sure it will probably continue because it was a huge chunk of our lives. It was during some, her teenage and early adults is when she was having to heal from all of this, and same with you, Landon. So it's a tough thing for families to have to walk through, for the parents, for the kids, and then also for that parent-child relationship of the Sibs. So way to go, both of you, because it's courageous to do what you're doing. Are there any other resources that we haven't mentioned that you guys used to help you heal?
Well, so in addition to having medication for depression and going to counseling, I also did neurotherapy, which was supposed to be helping with the depression, but it also ended up helping me kind of heal through some of the trauma as well. So I would recommend looking into that if that's something that would be feasible. Just because I would say that was one of the things that helped me heal the fastest, just because it was able to help retrain my brain how to produce serotonin and even melatonin, because I was having some sleep issues related to my little brother. And just to have my brain kind of kickstart those, I think they're neurotransmitters, having those kickstarted back into place, I think that helped me heal a lot faster than it would have been otherwise.
No, I didn't really have any other resources other than just going outside and working on a car when I was 14 or 15 just to get away. And I found a hobby that my dad and I shared. So it was something that I could ask him questions about and have him come out and help me. And we had that time together. So other than just my hobbies, I really didn't have anything else other than the medication and the therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I'm so thankful for Rad Sibs and for Rad Advocates. It's all starting to come together, which is great. And Katie, when Landon talked about him and his dad working on the car, that just makes me think of band with you. We, for 7 or 8 years, how many years?
I think it was 8 years, yeah.
Yeah, we spent every Monday night, we would go down to her honor band, and I would drive and sit and listen. And I was a music major as well, and that's what Katie ended up doing. So we got to share that too, kind of like you and your dad. So that's really cool.
Well, and we went to dinner before each rehearsal, which was our time to get to talk away from all the boys.
Yes. So we would try and find that, just like you and your dad. You had to have some time just with your dad. That was Katie and my time, and nothing really in 8 years ever came in the way of that. It was like, that was our set time. Nobody else can get in here. This is you and me. Let's go. I know. But that was great. That was great fun. I miss those days. Yeah. If you could give younger Sibs that are out there one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't isolate yourself and speak up, because what you have to say is important, and you do deserve your parents' attention, like Katie said, which I never thought of it like that. But yeah, that's exactly what I would tell myself as well. So it's what I'd tell the younger siblings.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was going to say. I will add that there are people out there that are going to be more helpful than others, like friends, relatives, even parents. And I would say try to find the people that are helpful to you, the people that will listen, the people that will provide you places to go if you need help, like my friend across the street. And, you know, learn who you can talk to about this, because I found out there were so many friends that just couldn't understand, that couldn't deal with what I was going through. And so they were not helpful to me. So find the people that are helpful.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, you two are definitely going to be one of the main resources for a lot of the people out there. So I just want to thank you again, Landon. Thank you so much. We hadn't met before today, but you have an amazing voice and you have wisdom in that head of yours. So use it. You know, don't stop after this podcast. Let this be a launching pad for you to get out there and keep going. And Katie, I love you. Thank you so much for doing this with us again. We really appreciate both of you. And I want to just say thank you to Rad Advocates and to Rad Sibs for allowing our ministry to be on here with you today.
Thank you, Carrie. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
You bet.
Rad Sibs Spotlight, bringing the Sibs back into focus.